Well, hello and thank you for joining me for another Alex on Tech and IT Wire TV interview. I'm joined today all the way from Israel by Koby Reshef. He's the CEO of PacketLight. Welcome to the program.
Hi, Alex. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Now, Koby, can you please tell us about PacketLight and the products and services that it offers to the market in 2021?
In 2021, we came out with a new 400 gig product portfolio, which is based on pluggable coherent interfaces, aggregating more capacity at smaller footprint, at lower power consumption. And in general, we improve the price per bit, which is the major factor today in the optical telecom market, how you reduce the price per bit transported over the fiber.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's always, everyone's trying to get more and more out of less. I mean, Moore's law is all about packing more transistors and getting more power out of, ever smaller amounts of size. But for those, I mean, I'm sure most people that are watching this know PacketLight and know what it does. But what's the short story of what PacketLight does?
So PacketLight enables the organization to build their own fiber optic network in an effective way. Their products are designed in a simple way that people which are not in day-to-day users of the DWDM and OTN technology can build their own fiber optical network between their data centers for their use and put as many services and capacities they want to squeeze out of the fiber optic communication between their data centers. And by that, they can offer better service, faster service, and bandwidth to the end users.
Now, as we were recording this, I was reminded by Equinix, which is, I'm guessing, one of your customers, I don't know. But today in the US, it's International Data Center Day. So that just happens to be the day that we're recording it. So you must have a lot of data center customers, right?
Yeah, a lot of data centers all across the world in Australia. So anywhere between in Equinix, next DC, or any other facility of data centers, this is where our equipment is located, connected to the layer 2, layer 3 type of devices, and increases the usage of the wavelengths and the capacities of the fiber between the two data centers.
Yeah.
So that's all our devices are hosted in those data centers.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I remember having a 300 bit per second modem, which back in 1983 we had to borrow from the local computer club's hardware library because they were very expensive. And then we had 1200, 24, 96, 14.4, 28.8, 33.6, 56.6. And now, of course, we're talking about megabits and gigabits, and probably you're dealing with terabits. But I mean, the evolution of the humble modem through copper wire was all about how to get more onto that same piece of metal, and through fiber optic. I mean, I'll ask you a bit later on as to what the limit is. But given that PacketLight's customers are carriers and utilities, dark fiber providers, content service providers, data centers, research and education campuses, and enterprises, we've heard a lot about the. And someone's just tried to message me that we've heard a lot about the digital acceleration that COVID caused so many businesses, and that must have been a big driver for a lot of demand for your business.
Yes, as people started to work from home, and companies need to accommodate for that, the bandwidth had to be increased. People watched more Netflix and consumed more bandwidth at home. So we saw a shift this year. Last year, that more and more carriers and service provider expanded their capacity to serve this growing need. Enterprises, on the other hand, sometimes their budget was a bit frozen or a bit delayed because they want to keep a close eye on what's going on before they get into the expense of expanding the bandwidth. So we saw more carrier expansion this year than enterprise type of customers. So this is the change we saw this year due to the COVID-19.
Yeah. Well, we also have all of the carriers upgrading all of their base stations to 5G, and all of those, towers need lots of fiber to, do all the backhaul and to send all that information over wireless. And that leads me to Telstra, which in the past couple of weeks was announcing that it was lighting up some of its dark fiber network with, in Australia, the company owning 250,000 kilometres of fiber optic cables. So, I mean, I'm guessing you're seeing similar moves from other carrier partners of yours worldwide.
Yes, yes, there is I totally agree. There is a large demand for building secure optical network infrastructure for DCI, metro, and long-haul applications over fiber for thousands of customers across the world. We saw the same request. Dark fiber has become more and more accessible for enterprises and data centers. And many telcos that sold only managed services in the past also provide today dark fibers. Leasing the dark fiber by enterprises enables them to build the network, build the security, which is also very essential these days. So complying with the EL2 CC certification or the FIP certification for encrypting the data between data centers and secured network is also in the mindset of all the banks, insurance companies, of course, government entities, utilities. They all want to protect their data that being exposed, passing between the two data centers from any tapping and so on. So building private optical networks by offering fibers from Telstra or someone else, Superloop or Vocus and so on, can offer and offering encryption services, fiber channel protocols, which use for the storage application, multiple of 100 gigs, and the upcoming 400 gig type of services is where these carriers are striving to.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've heard of dark fiber over the past 20 years. So obviously, some of these companies were very forward-thinking, and I guess some of the terminating and other equipment would have had to have been upgraded several times. So you're in the box seat to be providing those particular services. I know that Vocus in Australia just announced, I think it was its 12th harbour crossing. 12th set of cables going underneath Sydney Harbour, and there's another big provider in Australia called Aussie Broadband that's been putting in its own fibre networks in Melbourne, in Sydney, in Perth, and they've got plenty more planned. So this sort of activity is just exploding in because of all of the need, and again, that must be good for you.
So, yes, it's very good for us, and within the capitals there is a lot of fibers, and you can source it from different providers, at least in the major places where the data centers are, and for each data center you get all the providers with fibers there. We can also provide services between intercapital solutions where you don't have necessarily your own fiber infrastructure because it's owned by the tier 1 carriers. But since we have a standard-based OTN solution, optical transport network solution, we can interface to the existing POPs of these carriers and deliver the data from Melbourne to Sydney or anywhere else on top of the carrier infrastructure. So we don't necessarily need the dedicated dark fiber to form the optical transport solution for the enterprise.
Yeah. Now, clearly, PacketLight, having been started in 2000, PacketLight's founders were obviously very forward-thinking as well. And so I'm wondering, what was the spark that encouraged them to start the business? And what was the first product back in 2000 when the company first started?
When we started in 2000, it was before the bubble burst. So everybody wanted to try and innovate and provide new things, new technologies, new innovating things, and the value of each company was extraordinary. The idea behind PacketLight when it started was to encapsulate the SONET SDH type of traffic, which was dominating the network back then in 2000, and add the Ethernet-based services that the market or demand for Ethernet-based services grew, and to merge these two technologies together using and be able to reconstruct the SONET SDH clock on the other side of the network. So that was the innovation. We had an IBM switch inside, packet-based switch, and we built our own network processors in order to do that. So there was a lot of innovations and a very big R&D team working on that day and night. Over the years, the technology have shifted more towards a common OTN, a standard-based OTN transport layer, which actually did similar things of taking the SDH and Ethernet over the OTN network, optical transport network, adding FAC and other stuff in it. And over the years, we migrated to the standard-based OTN layer. We built our own optical transceivers back then, and we went, which were not pluggable, and we went with the MSA pluggable models of the SFP, SFP pluses, XFPs, CFPs, and so on, and adapted to the new market standards in order to provide the latest technology to the end users, which looked for a standard-based solution that they can mix and match different vendors on the same network. So that's the where we started and how we proceed with the standard base that was formed for the optical network transmission in the market.
Now you mentioned 400G. So what is the most popular product, most in-demand product of PacketLight today?
So what we saw this in the last year or so is that we get more and more requests for 100 gig interfaces connecting between the data centers rather than the 10 gig, which was dominating the market in 2017, 18, 19. There is I think now it's about 50-50 between the 100 gig and 10 gig interfaces. And therefore, the 200 gig capacity products that we have, wavelengths of 200 gig, muxponders and transponders, are the really dominating the sales in PacketLight. So most of the solution we provide today is either to take 20 times 10 gig or mix of 10 times 10 gig and 100 gigs into a 200 gig wavelengths between the two data centers. I expect that toward the end of this year, 2021, and beginning of 2022, the 400 gig will start to pick up more and more customers as demand for bandwidth will grow and the technology will be more mature, more available. The lead times of the optical modules will be shorter. And over time, I think for customers which need more bandwidth, the 400 gig for the next 2-3 years from now at least will be the dominating one. Over this 2022-2023 time period. So we already shipped for our first customers the 400 gig, and they deployed them these days in the field. And customers which build new networks and they foresee the need for higher capacity will go with the brand new 400 gig platforms. There are more conservative customers that would like to go with something which is stable for the last 2-3 years and mature technology. So depending on the nature of the customer, then we have the entire portfolio and they can choose. We always let our customer choose what they want.
Absolutely.
We don't force them for any technology.
Sure, and I'm just thinking, I mean, there's been problems with getting processors. There's a bit of a shortage at the moment. So have any of those has COVID affected any of the manufacturing for you?
Yeah. There is a kind of panic in the market for chips now these days. Chips which were manufactured in older technologies, the fabs are shutting down lines because they need to accommodate for the automotive and other industries that require more and more chips and more devices, and the new devices are in the new technology. So there is a kind of you get long lead time, like 1 year for chips that you need to get in 4 or 6 weeks. So you need to accommodate for that. You need to sit down. You need to plan your operation very well for the year, so you'll have enough parts and components on time for the build, and it's quite challenging. And the funny thing, it didn't happen in 2020, when the COVID started. It started in the last 2-3 months. Right. Suddenly this shortage. And we plan ahead for all the production, and we buy ahead things, and we take into account this enormous 6 to 12 months of supply time for certain parts and chips. So it's very challenging for us now. Yeah.
Well, especially when you're market leader. I mean, you can imagine the things that Tim Cook at Apple must have well, probably still doing with supply chain management, but then of course they've got their, probably not too many people say no to Apple. But it also made me think a few years ago when they were shutting down the space shuttle program, one of the snippets of information that leaked out was that they were using 8086 chips in some of the the computers on board, and they apparently had to buy motherboards off eBay or something to get some of these, and they were using some of the parts from the Enterprise in the Smithsonian, to be able to get it to fly. So, I mean, sometimes the technologies can be so old that it costs a lot of money to upgrade it.
You need to be very innovative to find your parts now, and you need to fight. And sometimes I get even involved with discussions with suppliers in order to try to advance the supplies for that. So
yesterday's news.
So far we managed to cope with it, and we don't have any lack of products. We build enough stock, and this is one of the advantages that we have, since we can ship very quickly, compared to larger, bigger companies which have their preferred type of, as you said, Googles or tier one customers. Any customers matter for us. If it's 2 boxes, 4 boxes, or 8 boxes, we try to deliver everything as fast as possible. And by having this stock and products off the shelf, sometimes we win project due to that and the delivery time that we can promise or get to the end customer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was just going to say, yesterday's news as we're recording this interview was that Intel is spending $20 billion to build 2 new fabs in Arizona. And they also want to start manufacturing processors for others, even hoping to win some of Apple's business, because Apple is only using TSMC. So it's good to see that players like Intel and others, I mean, they're really pouring the money in to try and get ahead of this problem, because the world needs processors more than ever before. And I'm sure your customer is very pleased that you're able to, supply them quickly. That would be rarer these days, and
this
ace
is
up your sleeve.
yeah. Yes, correct.
Now, clearly with the DWDM, or the dense wavelength division multiplexing, and the OTM, as you've said, the optical termination modules, you and your competitors have clearly figured out how to continue increasing the capacity of fibre to incredible new levels, 400 gig, for example. And I guess that's a bit, as I said before, sort of analogous to Moore's law. But what is the limit, if there is one? And, can you use quantum technologies in the future to extend things, or is that still in the future? What's sort of a peek into how you might continue pumping more down fibre?
Okay, so the idea is in the technology, and I don't think they reached the limit yet, is to improve the modulation formats, so we can pack more and more symbols more and more bits into symbols. So we started with the QPSK, and then QAM, and then 64 QAM, and so on. And going forward, also the symbol rate is increasing. So you can increase the symbol rate in the same and achieve more capacity. So if you look on the advances, we had a 10 gig for, I think, technology for about 10 years, which was direct detection. Then starting with the modulation of 100 gig formats, which lasted for the last, I would say, was most popular in the last, since 2012 to 2018. In 2018, we started with the 200 gig, by advancing to 16 QAM modulation, so we can pack twice the capacity per wavelengths. Now we are speaking about 64 QAM, 16 QAM, 64 QAM, and we are reaching the 400 gig, 800 gig capacities per wavelengths. And this is improving heading more and more bits on the same wavelengths and increasing the capacities. Over time, the technology also shrinks, and instead of building separate lasers and receivers for the transmit receive, everything is moving into silicon photonics, which shrinks everything to a smaller footprint. You can eliminate a lot of the PCB, which caused a lot of limitations also, and how signals passed over the PCB, which degraded the signals, and also the coupling of the DSP and optics together on the same module, enabling it to improve the performance of the optical transport link. So the advantage also the There are a lot of advances in the micron technology, or the silicon itself, going to smaller dimension and lower power consumptions, enabling more processing power. And all of that enables still the bandwidth to grow significantly in a shorter time span. So the 10 gig was for, I think, about 15 years. The 100 gig for 6 years dominated. The 200 gig in the last, I would say, 4 years. And I think that in 2022, 2023, the 400 gig will become more and more dominating. So the lifespan of each technology is shrinking, which is very challenging, very challenging for us to keep up the pace and be for more and more innovation in a shorter time span. So you need to be very, very focused doing that.
Absolutely. So are there any customer or partner success stories, be they in Australia or other parts of the world, because we have a global audience, that you'd like to highlight?
So we had a lot of new successes with the service providers and carriers. I'm not sure that I'm allowed to say all the names.
Sure. No,
but,
that's okay.
But I would say that we had, since the beginning of the year, we already won 2 networks for 2 service providers, tier 2 service providers in Australia. We build a lot of data center connectivity for government applications and enterprises in Australia as well, a lot of on the broadcast and media industry. So we have large-scale networks for a lot of the media and broadcast companies in Australia. We really have provided the high capacity. They are moving from the older type of interfaces to more and more 100 gig requirements for encryption. And we did a certification for with the local body in Australia for certifying the encryption solution, because encryption is becoming more and more important. So this is something specifically we did for Australia, which also comply with the European and Singaporean encryption standards. I think that we keep on increasing the density and the capacity we can offer the customer per one new rack. So it keeps on improving over time. And this drives the deployment of more and more solutions in the field.
So what's a little bit about your own personal history in the world of tech before you became the CEO of PacketLight?
Okay, I started with a bit different technology, wireless. So I worked in a company named Teledata in Israel. And back then, everything was telephony. So we started with the first wireless type of solution, which could transport a ISDN type of rate also.
Which would have been fast back then.
Which was very fast. So it could each modem could have. It was by the way very analogic to what happened in the optical industry. We started with the kind of QPSK and then QAM modulation in order to transport 2 lines of 64K. We needed to use QAM, and then we merged it also and enlarged it to ISDN rate. And we had a track, and we went all around the base station to do all the calibration and tuning, and it was that was my first experience in the building this type of networks, and the modem in this wireless. So I built the base station and the access point modem for that. Then I moved on to build ASICs. And I did some ASICs in the ATM area. So a lot of high-speed lines, which were back then 200 meg and 800 meg. I'm speaking about the 1998, something like that. So that was the fastest rate at the serial interface of 800 meg on a backplane and an ASIC for the ATM cells, doing all kinds of link lists and cell distribution of the ATM. And then I joined PacketLight at year 2000. So I'm 21 years in PacketLight. and I managed the hardware R&D group and team. There we did all the network processors and the IBM chipset for transporting the mix of ATM, SDH, Ethernet packets over the same uplink trunks of the, back then it was 2.5 gig POS, packet over SONET, and then the 10 gig came out. And it was a big chassis only for these capacities of 20 gig. So it's very high-end. It was very high-end, very innovative. It was very hard to explain from the sales perspective, sales people to explain the technology and how to use it because it was so innovating. This is what I did. So I'm coming from a very rich technical background, and I believe that CEOs today, if they want to succeed in a high-tech company, they need to understand very well in the technology they sell, understand the customer needs, and the market trends and where it's going, and to see 2-3 years ahead, and then plan the products for that, and be very rapid with the changes, because you need to adapt to the fast technology changes that are happening in our field, at least.
Yeah, well, I mean, as Wayne Gretzky, the famous ice hockey player, always said, you have to skate where the puck is going to be, not where it's already been. And that is looking ahead. And clearly, so, I mean, on that particular point, how do you think PacketLight and the industry is going to evolve over the next few years? I mean, obviously you talked about, 400, 800, but, what might we be looking at in 2030? I think probably teleportation is a little bit too soon for 2030, but what do you think we might see over the next few years?
So I think that companies need to develop much faster over time. We need to choose the right technology partners. So companies cannot do anything by themselves and build all the innovation in-house. They need to look for cooperation with technology partner in order to come with the latest innovation fast to the market. Because if you try to develop everything by yourself, either you need to be a billionaire and throw out so much money and take all the risk, or you can rely on other parties that you team up with to provide the full solution and the full system to the market, to the end customer. And I think that the market will not be very forgiving. So if you develop the wrong technology, or you are too late offering the product to the market, you will lose your market share very fast, and you will be punished for that. So you need always to keep an eye on the future, on the technology partners, team up with the right ones, and come up with the new technology the fastest you can, because time to market is really critical these days.
Yeah, shrinking. Yeah, I mean, they talk about how from 1G to 2G to 3G to 4G, it was like a 10-year. I mean, I think it was probably more in the early days, but certainly between sort of 2G, 3G, and 4G, there was a 10-year gap. But I hear so much about 6G these days, and people say, oh yeah, 2030, it'll come in 2030. I reckon it'll be around before then, because things are moving so quickly.
And think about the carrier that invested so much amount of money and effort deploying 4G, and it needs to migrate to 5G, and now already 6G. So sometimes you need to take a brave decision and sometimes migrate over one technology, because you cannot every 1 or 2 years deploy. It takes the carriers or the service provider a lot of time to deploy these networks. It's not 1 day or 2 weeks or even 1 year time to and you know how vast is Australia, and how to upgrade all the towers and all the comms and so on. It takes a lot of time. So it's not easy decisions, and sometimes and you need to keep on investing, and the revenues that you get from a cell phone or is less and less.
Yeah, the ARPU keeps shrinking.
Yes, correct. Yeah. And we always need to think in the eyes of our customers, or the customers of our customers. So we need to help them survive, help them to strive, help them to be successful. And this is what I see as our aim as a company, not to deliver just boxes, but to think okay, how we can provide them something better so they can beat the competitors using our equipment.
Yeah. Well, it's through technologies like yours that telecommunications companies are not dumb pipes, but they're offering a whole stack of smart services which they need to do to stay competitive, lest some disruptor come along and disrupt them out of business. So,
Yeah.
so unless you want to make a comment on that, my second last question is simply to ask if you can please share some of the best advice that you've received in life to help you get where you are today.
So actually, I was lucky and had very good mentors that I learned from, and many good colleagues that I work with them for many years. And I learned from all of them. I learned the importance of being with a team, not to criticize too many, not to criticize too much. Try to help in every time that you can to develop the product, even if it's not your task. So you need to think bigger, see the bigger picture all the time, not look on the small, always on the small details, but take a look on a bigger picture, see what's the weak link, or what's the weak link in the chain, and enforce it and assist it. And I think always be very attentive to your clients and employees and colleagues, and really do the best that everybody will become happy to work with a smile, and trying to be take every day and try to do the best you can in order to the success of the company and benefits of your employees and customers and their success.
Yeah, well, I've heard CEOs say that, they're the ones who arrive first, leave last, have to clean up all the messes. They've got the toughest job. So you obviously, you have to be in the trenches and be surveying the battlefield at the same time. And
yes, yeah. You need to be in the trenches with everyone in the company. You can't sit in your room and expect that everything will go fine. You need to be in the field. You need to meet customers. You need to work in the lab sometimes together with the R&D. And since I'm coming from a rich R&D, I sometimes it relaxes me to sit in the lab a few hours from time to time.
Yeah.
So. That's
well, you get the all-rounded perspective, and hopefully, you're in the R&D lab and you sort of see something and go, "Hey, we should be trying that,"
Yes, yeah. And you'll be surprised how things haven't changed in the last 30 years. The main basic, material that you come with, and you pass in the past. Never mind if it was wireless, and now it's an optical network. The ideas, the methodologies, or the way you think, how you solve problems, stay the same.
The old ways.
So that's very.
The old ways are still good.
Yeah, exactly. At least I feel, it makes you feel more happy than just going over now board meetings or things like that. Always to
got to get your hands dirty, as they say.
Exactly.
So, what is your final message to IT Wire viewers and readers, and to your current and future customers and partners?
I think that for our partners and customers, I would say we very rely on their ideas and improvement methods. We always have an open ear for them. We embed a lot of their requests and change requests into our solution from hardware perspective, software perspective, management perspective. So it will become a better product, more useful product. Will give them the advantage edge that they need in the market today, because they also have their own challenges competing in the market. And we always open for feedback to improve the experience support of the services that we provide, and that's more or less wraps it out.
Well, Koby Reshef, the CEO of PacketLight, thank you very much for your time. It's fascinating to hear about sort of the cutting edge of technology, and You know, it's like with the military or with enterprise. You know, a lot of things happen up there that filter down into the consumer technologies that we all take for granted today. And to sort of get an insight and hear a little bit more about that, it's always warms my heart, and hopefully it does for the viewers and the readers as well. So thank you very much, and I hope we can speak again in the future.
Yes, for sure. And thank you, Alex and ITWire, for this interview and time spent with me. Thanks a lot for that.
No worries. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Alex.